right. Welcome to the Patriotic Dragon radio program, a show to bring open, honest, thoughtful conversation back, allowing individuals and groups to be a part of a better, brighter future. As always, the views expressed on the program are not necessarily those of the guest, WYYZ, Pickens County GOP, or the sponsor. This month's sponsor is the Pickens County Republican Party. Our Pickens County GOP group is here to provide support to all candidates running under the GOP banner in the primary contest and support the chosen candidate in the general election, whether it be local, state, or national races. Our guest this week is past chairman of the GOP, Larry Toney. Larry, thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure, Will. Thank you for putting this program together and letting me participate.
All right. If you would, before we get started, give us a little bit of your background.
All right. Well, first of all, I only got involved in politics about 15 years or so ago when I moved to Pickens County. Prior to that, I was in business and spent some 30, 40 years in the business area. I graduated from Georgia Tech back in the 60s in industrial engineering and went into industry and served with several different companies, finally residing, becoming the chairman CEO of a consulting firm here in Atlanta. After several years at that, I retired. This was all consumptive, so I had no involvement in politics. I'm sure I voted every year, but don't remember who I voted for every time. But then after I retired in 1990, I went back to college and got my master's in counseling. And I saw in my business experience that there were lots of folks that were in need of counseling. And the first one I worked on as a counselor was myself. And when I did all I could do with that one, that was not necessarily a successful undertaking.
First one usually isn't.
No, that's right. That was a pilot project. Then we moved to Pickens County, and I started to put roots down. And I traveled about 80% of the time for 25 years or so. And then, as I say, put the roots down here and started looking around and saying, what's going on right here? And holy smokes, there's another world out there, the world of ordinary people, citizens, government, politics. So I began to get involved. And actually, when I first came here, I attended both meetings, Democrat and Republican Party meetings. And I won't go into why I didn't join the Democratic Party. I'll just say that I joined the Republican Party because I saw the opportunity to do something and to do some of the right things. And since then, I have become, as you mentioned at the outset, past chair of the Pickens County Republican Party for about 3 terms, currently a member of the district committee and the executive committee here in the county, as well as the state Republican Party committee. So that sort of brings you up to date on where I am right now.
Yes, sir. That's good. I appreciate it. Well, topics we really want to talk about today is, and it's kind of framed around the Electoral College, but if we can just kind of so the listeners would like to know more about the process of how the Electoral College came to be.
Okay. Well, the Electoral College actually is a complicated, almost on the surface appearing mysterious contraption. But when you find out how it all came about, it starts to make a great deal more sense. The people the founding fathers, as we often call them, had 2 things in mind. Is one, they wanted to do something new in the way of governance. They wanted to improve on what had happened in the eons of time before then. And the second thing was their focus on freedom. Freedom for the individual. That was probably the driving motivation. Provide freedom for folks, knowing that they may not use it well, they may abuse it, but it beats anything else out there. Subjugation of any kind doesn't have much of a future, but they believed in freedom for the individual as opposed to being a subject of some collective organization. And then the uniqueness of it came about because they started crafting this new nation with its constitution, and they came to the Electoral College as a mechanism for selecting leaders. I think it's interesting to point out that the founding fathers did not understand what a career politician was. They didn't foresee career politicians. You can say that's a little short-sighted, but it's real. They saw citizen politicians, political servants coming in, serving, going home after a period of time, and resuming their other life and someone else replacing them. Never did they envision a career politician. The idea of someone serving in government for 40 years was just more than they could fathom. Anyway, as they put together the Electoral College as the process for selecting leaders, they had a number of considerations that said, I want to do something different, I want to emphasize freedom, and they were looking out to protect the individual. They put the college together. They wanted to give weight to individuals, the citizens, and so they said, okay, for every member of Congress, every member of the House of Representatives that a state has, they get one elector. Because they had to sell 13 or more states, small number of states, they had to provide some incentive, if you will, for the state organization itself. So they didn't want the large states who were going to have lots of representatives to just overpower the smaller states. So they gave each state 2 senators, and with that, an elector. So it's the very minimum that any state can have, and we still have some that have the minimum number, is 3. For every 2 senators and 1 representative, you get 3 electors. There's some states that say, like Wyoming, that still have 3 because of their population. They got 1 representative and 2 senators. So they tried to give some balance to the state as an organization, governing body, and to the people, figuring that as the people grew, they would get more representatives and grow in number of electors. A few years ago, they decided that the District of Columbia would also get some, and the number of electors they get is equal to whatever the lowest number is in any state. And let's say Wyoming is one of the smaller states that has 3, so the District of Columbia has 3. So in total, you have 100 senators, you have 435 House of Representative members, and 3 more for the District of Columbia, which gives you a total of 538. And it is those 538 individuals, electors, that select the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States. And that's how all of that came about in an attempt to develop a unique type of organization, protect the freedom of individuals, and also to lure the states into ratifying this whole proposition.
So as the states grew in population and had more representatives, it would be, yeah.
And as they grew in states, because after the founding fathers put this together, we added states, lots of states.
Right.
But the deal was always the same. You get 1 for so many, 1 representative a minimum, and 2 senators, regardless of what your population is.
Right.
So it just came to the number that we have now, 435. And by the way, we will not have more than 435 members of House of Representatives. That's the number. It's capped at that, obviously. If we added any more states, we'd add 2 more senators for it. But the population determines how many members there are of the House of Representatives, thus ultimately the number of electors that a state has. You hear the phrase often about every 10 years about redistricting.
Right.
And what happens in redistricting is some states lose representative and electors, both. They lose the representative and then they lose the electors. For example, in the last 10 years, 2010, Georgia picked up an additional elector with the establishment of the 14th district, which now is the congressional district in the Northwest, where Tom Graves is the present congressmen. Georgia has 16 electors because they have 14 representatives and 2 senators, 16. Okay.
So what state lost it, do you know?
New York.
Well, that's a good thing.
Well, well, there's a shift. There's been a shift going on for
I mean,
30 or 40 years.
Some of the New York money came to Georgia. That's a
Yes,
good thing.
yeah, and so did the electors too.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. All right. Okay, good deal. Well, and as far as that kind of touches on the background of how the delegates are chosen, but give them some more detail of how our state, say of our 16, obviously the 2 for the senators, that's set, but how are those electors chosen?
Well, it was part of the design, the grand design of the Founding Fathers. They did not want the central government to have any influence on the electors at all. In fact, there is no such thing as an electoral college that meets. It's an electoral college that exists, but it never gets together. All the votes are done in the states.
Oh.
The 16 electors of the state of Georgia meet in the state, generally in Atlanta. They never communicate with any of the other electoral colleges. They get their information and send it to the Speaker of the House,
Right.
and who makes the official announcement. There are a couple of things I think the listeners might be interested in there is, what about the electors? How are they selected? Well, they're selected by the parties.
Okay.
In fact, the list of electors already available for the Republicans and Democratic electors to be in this county, in this state. They'll be decided who gets to vote,
Right.
depending on the outcome of the popular vote. Okay. It is possible, theoretically it's possible for a candidate to get the most popular votes, but not the most electoral votes. And in that case, the popular vote doesn't count.
Right.
It's the electoral votes that do count. That's happened maybe 5 times.
Right.
There's another question is, these electors are appointed by their various parties. What happens if an elector chooses not to vote as prescribed? Prescribed would be based on the votes within the state, the popular vote within the state. There have been a few instances where an elector has decided that he really didn't want to vote for the apparent winner of his state's account. That's happened, as I say, a few times, but never has it ever affected the outcome of an election.
Okay.
It's always been whatever the electoral college vote was prescribed to be was.
Okay.
So you get some aberrations in it every once in a while, but it still has stood the test of time,
Right.
fortunately, and it's still a viable system. It doesn't just sit naturally with people, because who's ever heard of an electoral college? Nobody else in the world has an electoral college, just the United States, and you saw why that we have it here in this country,
Right.
to preserve the freedom of individuals and to have a unique form of government.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, and to keep from the standpoint of the individuals of being the popular vote, that would give, if it was strictly a popular vote, then states like Florida, New York, California that have massive population, it would take that voice away from the Wyomings, the Montanas, the Kansas.
Precisely.
That type of thing.
And that was part of the wisdom of the Founding Fathers.
Yeah.
They couldn't eliminate that, but they could
Create a balance.
ameliorate,
Yeah.
create a balance.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we talk about on a lot of the shows now. If you know, and I to say this, and people that know me know how I feel about this. I carry 2 books with me. One of them is the U.S. Constitution, and one's the Holy Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, any question I have, I can generally answer it out of one of those two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if we would follow the Constitution, we would have much less problems.
Very true.
Yeah.
Those 2 books will answer just about most any question
Yeah.
that comes up.
Yeah.
Not quite so creatively as some people might do,
Mhm.
but more reliably
Oh yeah, more reliable.
and more durable over time.
Yeah, I'll take something that's worked for 2,000 years versus something that's worked this century.
Right. Right.
All right. With the election season upon us, we know how many delegates Georgia have. Something came up, and I actually had a listener send me a note about this. the difference in how what you were just talking about, the unpledged delegates in the Democrat Party versus Republican Party, because in my research it appears that we don't necessarily take and let our delegates the same way.
Right. We don't. They're selected by the electors are selected by the different parties in each of the states, and there are some differences in the way in which they do that. I'm not too familiar with an unpledged elector, unless you mean one that was elected to vote for somebody but decided to go vote for somebody else.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the other way to say it, I guess, is what is referred to in modern media and modern times as superdelegates, which the Democrat Party initiated 20 years or so ago, that they created these superdelegates that are what I would deem to be different from how the Constitution laid it out in the 14th and 25th Amendment, that they are past presidents or past vice presidents. They are people who have held high public office who are superdelegates. Do we have any superdelegates in the Republican?
All right, before I track down that particular subject, and I will answer it, address it, there is one other comment I need to make about the composition of the Electoral College. There are two states that have two different districts, Nebraska and Maine. And it's like adding another state in terms of counting the vote, not in terms of giving more votes or electors. But Nebraska has one division that is controlled by its or influenced by its vote in that district, and then versus another district in that same state. Whereas all the other states except Maine, the state vote carries the day.
All right, so it's all or nothing
All or
versus
nothing.
they do an allocation of the total votes that are cast.
Right. Now, to your question about the superdelegates, the superdelegates are not recognized within the Constitution, and they're not a part of the Electoral College. Superdelegates are for conventions only.
Oh, okay.
And now when you move to the conventions, you open up a whole different kind of thing.
Yeah, 50 different ways, just like the ice cream.
I'm not aware of the Republican Party having any superdelegates. That seems to be a phenomenon that's only available to Democrats.
Through the DNC.
Yeah, they can have their delegates, but that's an internal policy decision made by each of the parties.
Okay, so hopefully that answers that educator's question to me about the super delegates, because it wasn't an educator that asked me that question. Obviously not a history teacher. Okay. And it kind of leads to that second question. How do you see the effect of superdelegates or unpledged benefiting the DNC?
Well, it gives the DNC leadership a lot more power.
Versus their voters.
They're able to steer the outcome of the convention. There's a lot of comment right now about, well, what happens if one of the candidates is indicted and drops out? Is it too late for somebody else to get involved? Now we're talking not electoral college, but we're talking the convention and the selection of candidates. Okay, now the selection of candidates, you got all these caucuses and primaries, et cetera, where people are jockeying around for position. It's a process where people are trying to accumulate delegates, be they super delegates or otherwise, so that they can influence the outcome of the convention. It is only the conventions that put forth candidates.
Right.
Okay? That's the selection of one of them comes about with the general election and the electoral college. But the conventions basically can do just about anything they want to do, any kind of methodology they want to do. For example, in the hypothetical case I was mentioning, all of the present candidates, well, there's two of them, All of them could, for some reason,
Drop
out.
Yeah, drop from a heart attack.
The
Some
convention.
of them are old enough.
Well, the convention could select two other people. In fact, they're going to select whichever two it is to run as president, vice president, whatever methodology they would use if those two were to drop out.
Okay.
And that's true for the Republican Party as well.
Okay.
If the leading candidates were, for some reason, to become unable to run, then the convention is going to name who the nominees are.
Okay.
They try to use the caucus and primary process, and that's how that normally works. But in cases that doesn't work, then they can set it up any way they want to.
Okay. All right. That explains it better that way. Well, kind of down that same road as we get to our March 1st date. How do you believe that the Super Tuesday or the SEC primaries will change the candidates' views of the South?
Well, first of all, let me say that I salute Brian Kemp, who seems to be the originator of the fundamental idea of having so many states. I believe it's 14 or so that are going to have their primaries on March 1st. And he drove it, and he was not alone, of course. He had to have concurrence from other states, and he got it from at least 13 others. But he did a good job in doing it. Now, to your question, anytime you've got 14 states deciding how they're going to vote in a primary, you got power. That's the biggest single block of votes that are going to occur in the 2016. There will have been 4 caucuses or primaries that have occurred up until then, and they are what I consider to be sort of stalking races. Mm-hmm. You're talking about sweepstakes when you start talking about the SEC primary because of the number of delegates that are concerned. Not all of those 14 are southern states, but the majority of them are. So you better, whoever the candidate is, he better have a very effective southern strategy when he approaches the presidential preference primary, which is what the March 1st election is being called.
Right.
So there are some non-southern states in there, but majority of them are southern states, and so that gives it an impetus. And the SEC primary, being an old Georgia Tech guy, I'll give him credit for it. That's all right.
All right.
Yeah,
I was
gotta call it something.
I was leaning into that. I was going to say, though you are a Georgia Tech graduate, and I know ACC is important with all things football. If it's an SEC, it's going to be big.
If it's good for the country, I'm all for it. That's a hallmark of a Texter.
Yeah.
We'll go for whatever works and works well.
Yeah. And I feel like, and obviously we had done an interview there with Brian Kemp in the past couple of weeks, and he talked about the logistics of it and that type of thing. But from my standpoint, and other listeners we've talked to and everything, the fact that the southeastern issues that are unique to the southern states that we need the federal government to be aware of, I think it gives us a better bully pulpit so that all those candidates who are coming in have to recognize the value of the southern states and what we bring to it on a national scene.
Right.
And I think, living in other parts of the country and in military service and that type of thing, we've been overlooked and somewhat put down as far as the South. But the business I'm in, working for a multinational, I know where all of those companies are moving. They're not moving to New York or California. They're moving to the Southeast. So I think trends are the way they are for a reason. So
Well, the founding fathers didn't have that kind of foresight, but I think if they were to look back over it and say, no, that's okay, that's a legitimate use of political power without to the detriment of anybody else.
Yeah.
That's just shrewd use of power on their part.
Yeah, and the flexibility of having a constitution that gives you guidelines but lets you have some flexibility. And
Well, there are some practical ramifications. Now, this is sort of a personal rather than historical point of view, is that come March 1st, there will have been 4 caucuses or primaries, and as you already seen, Since Iowa, we've had 4 people drop out of the race in both 2 parties. I suspect we'll see some more drop out of the Republican lineup of candidates about this time next week, when the New Hampshire is behind it. After the conclusion of the SEC primary, I think we'll be down to a much smaller number. We'll have 2 in the Democrats, 3, no more than 5 in the Republican. This is a personal opinion now. After the SEC primary, because the voices would have been heard from 4 and 14, 18 states. It's going to narrow the field down. You're going to get down to the real serious, and then it becomes a fantastic sprint from there to the Republican convention in July and the Democratic convention the week after that.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Then it becomes a war after the convention.
After the convention, yeah. And we've all heard about how important every presidential year election is, but how do you see this year's race stacking up here in Georgia?
Well, it's going to sound trite, but I'm going to say this is the most important election, the presidential election, that Georgia's held since the 1850s. It's that significant, and that's not a regional proposition. That's a national proposition, and Georgia, being part of the national picture, will be impacted by it. We're at a crossroads right now. We've got things happening in the political scene that have never happened before. I've never seen, in my years, I've been following elections off and on since '48. I remember when Truman beat Dewey, and that was when it was my first baptism of political fire. I have never seen such enthusiasm. Otherwise, I might, if this microphone were not in front of me, I might say anger, but I'll just say enthusiasm to keep it neutral in the country, on both sides, for that matter. One might be fear, the other one might be anger, but they're both a high sense of frustration. This will be a fairly well Donnybrook in the election for the president. And Georgia is going to play a role in that, a significant role with its 16 electoral votes. I think we're like 12th or 14th in terms of number of delegates. But it will be courted heavily, both in the before the presidential primary and in the general election. But it is an important vote because it affects the direction of the country. Are we going to continue to move in a progressive, and I do that with quotation marks, fashion, or are we going to go into a more conservative and realistic fashion? I heard someone say the other day that the Democrats are great and skillful in the world of politics and are very weak in the real world. The Republicans, on the other hand, are quite proficient in the real world and are sort of amateurs at politics. And I'd say that's probably a pretty accurate assessment.
And I wonder if we took that same analysis and we looked at the parties who have career politicians and the group that has business people who happen to have gotten involved in politics, where that would fall. And I think I got a pretty good idea without analyzing it much beyond.
I think I know where that came from. Yes, you just pointed it out. Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, how do you think that the Southeastern primary, do you think it'll have more effect here in the South, or do you think it will have the impact that I firmly believe it will on the nationwide? Mm-hmm. I think like as you said before, I think that when we cast our ballot and all our votes are taken, that the field will be set. That's my opinion. Obviously, that's all it is. But
Well, I tend to agree with you, and neither one of us can certify that to be the case. But it is certainly what I believe will happen. It'll be like dropping a very large rock into a pond, and the ripple effect will be significant. I might point out, I forgot to mention in my opening statements, I am currently a member of the Pickens County Board of Elections and Voter Registration. So I know about how voter registration is going on in the county, and it is heavy.
that's a good thing.
It's a good thing. We have historically been running about 18 to 19,000 voters, and it's going to be higher than that this year. There's been people registering to vote 50, 60 years old
Yeah.
that are now registering and planning to vote. So I would point out, from my experience on the Board of Election, that in the 2012 general election, we had 84.4% turnout in Pickens County. That is phenomenal. We had two precincts, two of the fairly larger precincts, that turned out with over 81% turnout. And that's, to me, that's just phenomenal. And I say that not because of the outcome, but because of that statistic itself,
Right.
the outcome of turnout. That was just absolutely fantastic. The average for all 12 precincts was 74.4% across the county. I think that.
And something along that line, I think maybe the listeners, because I was unaware of it until several years ago and stuff, as I got more involved in it, if you can kind of touch on the fact of how critical it is for citizens to get registered and that voter turnout, how that affects the number of delegates at our state convention. If you can kind of espouse a little bit about that.
Well, yes. In fact, I'll point out that in the Pickens County is fortunate or unfortunate, depending on your point of view, to be split into two districts. We're in both the 9th Congressional District and the 14th Congressional District. The congressman representing the 9th District is Doug Collins. The congressman representing the 14th District is Tom Graves. In the 9th District, and I'll speak more to that because I'm a member of the district committee for the 9th District, is one of the most conservative districts in the United States. As a matter of fact, it has more delegates to the state convention than any other district. The reason being is because of the voting history. Votes or delegates are assigned based on how many delegates voted for the Republican candidate in the last presidential election. And as such, the 9th District has the second highest number, a total of about 17 delegates to the state convention. That's an impact.
Yeah.
The candidates coming into this state have to look at the 9th and the 14th because they have so many, they're rich with delegates.
Right.
So they have to pay attention to that.
So for those candidates that are listening, and I know some of you do on the YouTube side of it, make sure that you get in line to come and see the people in Pickens County so you touch the 9th and the 14th District in your visits. So make sure that you make time to come see the heart of the districts.
I would certainly encourage that. If I might take just a moment to speak about the upcoming events associated with elections in Pickens County. As a member of the Board of Directions, I do know that the qualifying for candidates for local, there are 10 positions that are open for filling either incumbents' terms are up or they're people are electing not to run again. But there are 10 positions that are going to be open, and on March the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, from 9 until 5, qualifying will occur. On Friday of that week, from 9 to 12 only, close at 12 noon, qualifying will end. And anyone who wants to run for an office, any of those 10 positions, should present themselves at the elections office, 93 Pioneer Industrial Boulevard, and present themselves and be prepared to provide the filing fee, prove their registration, voter registration, and fill out some forms and become qualified to run for any one of those candidates. That's there's 2 for the school board, the sheriff, board of commissioner, a post commissioner, and everybody else, tax commissioner, clerk of court, magistrate, probate judge, etc. All of those folks need to be qualified at that point in time. If you don't make it on that time, you don't run. If you do qualify, you will be on the ballot on May the 24th, which is the primary here. Now, our state officials, like representatives or senators, will qualify in Atlanta. But these are for local offices, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about running to, you don't have to have a petition. All you have to do is come sign up,
All right.
pay the filing fee, and there's a posting of the filing fees in the elections office.
Okay.
But if you want to run, this is your chance to do it. If you don't do it then, it don't happen.
Okay. And yeah, and just to for the listeners out there, the number there at the Pickens County, the voter registration office is 706-253-8781. Call and speak to either Betty or Julianne, either one there, and they'll, for whatever office you might be looking to run, get a clarification, because on some of those there are some additional requirements that the sheriff's department has to do and some additional paperwork. So go early, make sure you've got all your information.
Mm-hmm.
And Larry, again, just those dates for the qualifying for the candidates.
March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th from 8 and 9 to 5, and on the 7th,
Yes.
yeah, the 7th, from 9 to 12.
Okay.
Qualifying will cut off at noon.
And the voter registration office does close for lunch between 12 and 1. So
Qualifying continues.
qualifying things. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
All right.
From those during those hours, 9 to 5.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Okay.
All right. That sounds good.
One other thing I might point out that I think the voters in this area, particularly in District 9 of Pickens County, never happened before. It's quite an unusual situation. I think it'd be well for folks to know and they may be interested in it. Currently, the elected state officers, that is the governor, the lieutenant governor, the speaker of the House, the secretary of state, the labor commissioner, not the labor commissioner, agricultural commissioner, and the insurance commissioner are all registered voters in the 9th Congressional District.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's never happened again before in this state. The 3 most important political figures are the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker of the House, and they're all from this congressional district, as well as the other elected officers that I mentioned. That's something to keep in mind. So the
Yeah.
9th District does have significant impact on the state.
All right. Okay. I want to thank you again for being on with us and sharing the information and everything on the Electoral College. Some notes for upcoming events. Our next event that we want to talk about is February 27th at Chattahoochee Technical College. We're doing a dinner and dance with the Sock Hops group out of Marietta, be coming to entertain us, and with a portion of those funds going to the Operation Comfort Warriors with the American Legion Post number 149. Those tickets are on sale and available at the fine local businesses like here at Rocco's Pub and Grill, where we're here doing the show this month, Buffalo Luke's, Quick Burger down on Highway 5 past the high school, Mary Ann's, and the UPS store. So please get your tickets early and look forward to having everybody there for a good, fun evening as well as for a good cause. All right. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you. My pleasure. Appreciate what you're doing, Will, and appreciate the opportunity to share some of the insights into this wonderful, wonderful political system that the United States of America has. It's not perfect, but it beats anything else going
There you
by
go.
far, by far.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Voltaire.
All right. I want to welcome everybody to the Patriotic Dragon radio show. And this portion of the show, we're having the chance to talk to Julie Roberts here at the polling voters registration office. Julie, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. I wanted to kind of touch base with you on with all the voting coming up. I know we're getting ready to start early voting. Just to kind of clarify on the dates and also the times that the office here is open.
Sure. We open beginning this Monday, February the 8th, for early voting here at the elections office at 83 Pioneer Road. We start voting the 8th. We end on February the 26th. Through the week, Monday through Friday, we'll be open 8 to 5. We do not close for lunch. And we're open one Saturday, which will be February the 20th. And the times for that date will be 9 to 4. And we're also open for lunch on that day also.
Okay. All right. Well, plenty of time for people to get out and get here and do their early voting, and we hope they will. The other thing I wanted to talk about is absentee ballots and that type of thing. Can you cover that?
If you're not able to come by the office and vote early, another option would be absentee ballots. And in order for us to send you an absentee ballot, you can go onto the Secretary of State's website, which is www.sos.ga.gov, and obtain an absentee application and fill that absentee application out. And the quickest way to get it here would be to fax it to us if you have access to a fax machine. Our fax number is 706-253-8782. And make sure you include a good telephone number in case we have to get in contact with you in case something was left off the form.
Okay, great.
Now, if you do not have access to a fax machine, then you may mail it in to us again at the address 83 Pioneer Road, and that's in Jasper.
30143.
Yes.
And if they have a question, they would want to call you here at the office?
Yes, our telephone number is 706-253-8781, and you can either ask for Julie or Betty.
All right, sounds good. We've had some listeners that had asked questions about transportation, that type thing. And I know on the Republican Party, what we're doing, if somebody is a Republican voter and they need, or any voter, if they need transportation, they can actually reach us and they can call me at my phone number at 770-318-8401. Is there any other number or any recommendation you'd make as far as transportation if somebody needs transportation and doesn't have it?
If a voter calls the office and tells us that they need transportation to the polls, as an elections office, we're not equipped to deal with, being able to pick a voter up and bring them to the polls. However, we do suggest, make some suggestions on who they could call. We do suggest that they might contact the local political parties. They may be able to help them. The MATS bus in the area is a good service to utilize, as well as maybe they have relatives or neighbors or friends that could get them up to the polls. But again, if that's not an option, then as long as it's they've got time, they can do an absentee ballot if they can't make it up to the polls.
Okay, all right. And again, that voters on the Republican side can contact us through our Facebook at Pickens County GOP. And then hopefully Mr. Robinson will be okay with this since it was posted in the Progress. David Robinson, my counterpart in the Democratic Party, his phone number is 706-531 0007, and also their website is the Pickens County Democratic Party. So if you need transportation or you need anything, please reach out to the parties. As we said earlier on the radio show, every vote does count. We want people to get out and vote their conscience for whoever their delegate and whoever their choice is. Main thing is to get out and vote.
Yes.
So, all right. As far as the primary and then the upcoming election beyond that, I know we have several positions that are being run for in Pickens County. Can you just kind of run through those?
Let me get my list.
All right. Okay. So while Julie's getting that list, again, I want to make sure you get those numbers out. David Robinson with the Democrat Party is 706-531-0007, and the Republican Party, my phone number is 770-318-8401. And Julie, what offices are open and being run for in Pickens?
This year for 2016, the office of the sheriff will be up, and as well as 2 Board of Commissioner positions. We have the chairman that's up, and we also have the District 2, which is the east side. That commission district is up. We have tax commissioner, clerk of court, probate judge, magistrate judge, coroner, and we have 2 Board of Education seats that are up, post 1 and post 4. We do have a map of the school board districts. If someone is interested in that, they can come by the elections office and look at the school board map to see if they do live in the 2 districts that are up.
Okay, and if somebody is considered to be a candidate for any of the positions, they can come in, contact you for additional information according to what's required, that type of thing, here at the Pioneer.
Yes, if you would like to look at maps or see if you are in certain districts, we certainly have that available for you to come in and look at. If you would like to know, we can tell you the week of qualifying, those dates. We're not sure yet when the parties will be here, but we will have that shortly. Or you may contact the parties directly for the qualifying dates.
Right. Yeah, and from the Republican side during the qualifying week, we'll be here the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th from 9 till 5, and then on Friday the 7th, we'll be here from 9 till 12 for those Republican candidates. And just to run through the qualifying fees for 2016, the sheriff's position, the qualifying fee is $1,943.28. Board of Commissioners, the chair's position is $1,979.28. District 2 would be in the east side. District Board of Commissioners is $306. The fee for tax commissioner is $1,591.05. Clerk of court is $1,591.05. Probate judge is $1,591.05, and magistrate is $1,591.05. For the coroner's position, the fees are $401.35, and Board of Education is $50. Something that came up in questions, some citizens had asked me previously, the way that the fees are determined, they are a percentage of the salary for those offices.
It is for every office except for the Board of Education, where because they don't get a salary per se, they're just paid per meeting. The governing authority sets the pay or the qualifying fee for the Board of Education.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a well-needed position, a lot of hard work, looking for some good people to be running this year, and they're all underpaid for what they have to do.
Oh, yes.
So it's got to be a love for the children to do that job.
That is correct.
So, okay. All right. Well, Julie, thanks again for taking the time to talk to us, and we'll be back and talk to you as we get closer to the May and then, of course, the general election.
Okay, thank you for having me.
All right. And, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to mention the Pickens County Republican Party. We believe in the principles of the party should be based on the precepts laid down by the founders of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We would like to urge everyone to get out and vote. Every vote does count. The presidential preference primary for the Republican Party is Super Tuesday, March 1st. Early voting here in Pickens County is February 8th through the 26th, including a Saturday, February 20th. We'd also like to invite everyone to come out for this fourth Saturday of February the 27th for our fundraiser with the Sock Hops out of Marietta with a concert at Chattahoochee Technical College. Join us for an evening of dancing and dining from 7 until 10.